Yeah, hi guys, good morning. So in today's session, we will be looking into the architectures. Okay, so how many type of architectures are there? What is the difference? How many type of environments are there? What is the difference between them? Which architecture we are going to use in our project? I mean, what are we going to talk in interviews? How will we represent our project in interviews? Okay. And also apart from that, we'll try to see what is happening when we are trying to search for a specific web server, I mean a specific website on the browser. What is happening in the backend? How are we able to get all the information? So this part we'll try to cover in today's session. So let me share the screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in today's session, we'll look into client server architecture. Okay.
I did not get your screen.
Sorry, you did not get?
Screen.
I mean, you're
Screen share.
unable to see the screen.
Okay.
Can you see this now? Okay.
Actually, I was connected with app only, but cannot see your screen.
Yeah. I
I
didn't
will
understand.
reconnect once. Once.
Sai group are try to please rejoin and check, guys. Check your Wi-Fi connections. You are connected to which Wi-Fi router? We have routers for every room. If you are sitting in a hall, then please try to connect to the Geo router. If you are sitting in the room 2, please try to connect to that Airtel router and disconnect your personal devices from router until we complete the session. Okay. So we have something called client server architecture. Now here, what do you mean by client and what do you mean by server? Any idea what is client, what is server? Simple terms, client can be anything which is trying to request, okay, which is trying to request for a resource is called as client. Example, I will explain. And server means respond to the request, right? So client means anything which is trying to request for a resource or any kind of query. One second, guys.
I can see your screen now.
Yeah, but this is, I mean, the issue has been resolved. Okay, so client means which request for a resource, server means which respond to the request. So for example, this is my browser. I'm trying to hit facebook.com. So in this case, which is client and which is server? So who is trying to request?
We are the clients.
Oh, not we. Browser is a The browser is a client, and Facebook.com, I mean the server where the Facebook application is deployed, is server. Means we are getting response from the server. Clear? So in our case, client is nothing but our browser who is trying to access a specific request, and the request is Facebook.com. Then we are able to see some output. From where we are getting the output? From server, which is trying to respond to this. Right? So now we have different type of architectures. We have entire architecture. We have footer architecture. We have three-tier architecture. We have, sorry, not footer. We have entire architecture. So we have different type of architectures. Why do we need client and server architecture? Any application, whether it is a web application, it is a desktop application, mobile application, any application will be created based upon this architecture only. Every application will be created based upon this architecture. Now, for every project, in whatever company you are working, in whatever project you are working, whether you are working for Google, Microsoft, or any XYZ company, there will be different environments. Okay? So what we will be having? Type of environments. So we will be having different type of environments, and in our case, till the end of this training, okay, till we complete this training, and also in interviews, this is what you need to talk about the environment. So how many environments do we have? We have three type of environment. One is development, staging environment, one is production environment. Okay, how many type of environments we have? We have three different type of environments. One is development, one is staging, and one is production. So what is the difference between these environments? And which environment has the highest precedence, means highest priority? For example, I'm trying to access Netflix.com. We are able to get the response. So from which environment we are able to get the response?
Production.
Production. Always remember, whenever we are getting the response, right? So that is from the production environment only. So this can be also called as live environment. Here, whenever we are seeing any response, it means that we are getting that response from production environment. In some companies, there might be different environment. Means apart from development, staging, and production, they might have non-prod environment, or they might have UAT environment. We can have 4 environments or 5 environments, or we can have 3 environments, but at least they will try to maintain 3 environments. Why? Because before moving anything to production, these environments are called as lower environments. The developer, whenever he tries to create the code, he will be testing that code in the development environment. Means first he will test whether this code is running perfectly or not. Once this code is successfully tested, then it is moved to the staging environment. Here also we try to implement some testing on this application. Once everything is okay in staging environment, then this application is moved to the production environment. Or else what will happen? If suppose the developer has created the code and he has pushed to production without any testing, and the users are not able to access the application, so what will happen? There will be a lot of impact on the business. Means if there is any error, then we are not aware about this error. So I want my application to be tested prior to moving to production environment. That's the reason we have lower environments for every project, right? Clear? Guys, yes or no? If you are having any questions, then please let me know.
Saber, what is the difference
Yes.
between development and staging environment?
The development, mostly developers will be pushing the code and they will be testing. Staging environment will be used to check for the performance of the application. Staging and production will be similar. For example, we are having 100 servers for production. In development, we might have only 5 servers. And when it comes to staging and production will be almost similar. Here, testers will be doing the testing. Apart from that, the business level testers will also be implementing the testing, user acceptance test, to check the performance of the application. Once it is passed, then only it will be moved to production. Clear?
Okay.
So these are the different type of environments. Now we are having different type of architectures. So why do we need these type of architectures? Which architecture we should talk in interviews? What is the difference between them? How our client is communicating with the server? So this is my client, and is nothing but someone who is trying to request for the resource. And then we have the server. So what is happening? Our client is trying to request, and server is responding to the client, right? But how are we communicating with our server? We are communicating based upon the IP address. How are we communicating? Based upon the IP. Okay. So how are we communicating? Based upon the IP address. So we will be, for every server, if you want to connect to that and if you want to communicate, then there will be one IP address which is used for the communication. Again, in IP addresses, what do you mean by IP? Full form of IP? Internet
Internet protocol.
protocol to communicate with this. Okay, we have internet protocol. Again, in IP addresses, we have two type of IP address. One is IPv4, one is IPv6. IPv4 means version 4 and version 6. Guys, this session is very important because this is what we will be using when we are trying to design our architectures. Make sure you understood each and every concept here. So IPv4, example of IPv4, I mean, how can we identify that this IP address relates to IPv4? For example, 192.168.0.0. This is one example of IPv4. So we will be using a lot of devices, right? For example, we are connecting to Bluetooth, we are connecting to AirPods, we are connecting to Wi-Fi. Our mobile, we are trying to connect with multiple devices. So how the communication is happening? The communication is happening based upon the IP address only. Okay, an IPv6 example, this very lengthy. So this is how your IPv6 IP address will look like. This is how IPv6 IP address will look like. We will be using IPv4 IP addresses as part of our training because this is more than enough for us. Okay. Now, apart from IP address, we have something called host name as well. Means for every server, we will be having one host name. For every server, we will be having one host name as well. Host name, what do you mean by host name? What is host name?
Name of the device.
Host name will be name of the server or device. Okay. So even for your laptop, there will be one host name. Even for your laptop, there is one IP address. IPv4 is assigned. Right? So based upon this IP address only, the communication is possible. We are communicating based upon the IP address. Okay. Now let us get back to the architecture. So as I said, we have different type of architecture. Right? One tier architecture, two tier, three tier, and n tier. One tier architecture means one tier architecture means this is our machine. Okay, and in this machine only we will be setting up each and every component. Means okay, so we will be having our hardware. Okay, we will be having our operating system, and we will be having our application layer as well. App layer and data layer means all the components are in the same server. This is nothing but our server. So what is happening here? For example, we are having one client. Okay, so this is my client. Client means browser. Okay. So from my browser, I am trying to communicate with this particular server. So in one tier architecture, your application server, your database, your operating system, your hardware, everything is compressed in the same server. No one from the outside world will be able to access. Means the communication is not possible. You cannot communicate with this application from the client layer. Like in our machine, currently we have Microsoft Office, right? We have MS Office. This one. This is one example of one tier architecture. Means your application is available here. Whatever you're saving, I mean, the data is stored in the same machine, and no one from the outside world will be able to access these documents. Can someone access my documents which are available in my Microsoft Word? No one, because we are not exposing this application. Means everything is in my local machine only. This is not been exposed. So this is only used for development environment. Means any application which you want to deploy and test on your own in your local machine, and you don't want to provide any kind of internet access, or it should not be exposed to anyone, then we will be using one tier architecture. Here. So now next is we have two tier architecture. So in two tier architecture, we will be having our client layer. This is nothing but our browser. Is nothing but our client, and then we will be having one server, and in this server we will be creating our operating system, and then we will be creating our hardware. Right, this is nothing but my hardware, and this is nothing but my operating system, and then we are trying to deploy the application. So what kind of application? This is my server layer. So what kind of application we are trying to deploy? Can be any application, any web application in our. For example, we were using Netflix and Facebook, right? So let me use example Netflix. Netflix is my application. In which programming this application has been developed? It can be either Java, .NET, Python, any programming language. Is developed using any programming language. It can be Java, .NET, Python. Right? So now, and in the same server, we will be having our data layer as well, means our database to store the information related to our application. Example of database, it can be MySQL, or we have PSSQL, we have Oracle. It can be any database, whatever database we are using for our application. We can either use MySQL, Oracle, PSSQL. So whenever we are trying to access our applications, right, whether it is Facebook or Netflix, so they are storing some user information as well. Means you need to pass email ID and password. So where is this email ID and password is getting stored? This is getting stored in the database. The moment you will click on login, what will happen? This login button, developers will write some business logic. Means the moment this button is triggered, it will go and connect to the database. It will try to fetch the user ID and email ID and password. It is trying to authenticate. If that is true, then only you will be logging into Facebook account, or else it should throw this error. This is how the code has been written. Who has written the code? The code has been developed by developers. So we are not worried about the code. We are only worried about the deployments, right? So now what is happening? So in two-tier architecture, our application server and our database is deployed in the same machine. And this is exposed. Means the browser can access our application. Right? Now, why do we are, I mean, if two-tier is working for us, then why are we moving to three-tier application? So here what is happening is, so in our hardware, for example, assume that our hardware is of 4 GB RAM, 4 of CPU, and we are having 20 GB HDD, means hard disk. This is my hardware configuration. And when it comes to my software operating system, it is Windows, for example. And when it comes to our application layer, what is happening? This 4 GB will be used by our application layer as well as our database layer. Means these two layers are struggling to use this 2 GB. 2 GB each, right? So now what will happen is, for example, number of users has been increased, and our application layer needs 3 GB of capacity. Our database is using 2 GB, application layer is using 2 GB. So what will happen? If I want to increase the capacity for application layer, I want 3 GB to be assigned to application layer. So we don't have enough resources. The moment we don't have enough resources, these two layers will try to struggle. They will try to occupy the RAM. The moment they try to occupy the RAM, what will happen? The users will be impacted. Means what kind of impact we can see on users? We can see poorness from the server. Yes, we can see the server got. We can see the application is unreachable. We can see the application got crashed. If suppose you are having 120 GB of volume in your mobiles, all the 120 GB has been occupied. So what will happen? Your mobile performance is very slow. Yes or no? Why? Because there is not enough capacity to run the application. RAM is responsible to execute these processes. And if there is, if we don't have enough RAM capacity, then the programs will not be able to run. Then we will be seeing all these issues. Let me open one website. Whether it is running or not. Freenom. Let me hit this Freenom. This particular website took at least more than 1 second to load the application. Right? Let me try to search for this. The moment I have clicked this check availability, it is still taking time to load. Right? Even if I'm clicking on check availability, this is not working, or else the server is very slow, it is not responding. Right? It took few seconds to load, but there is no output. There are a lot of bugs in this website. This is a free website, guys. I don't think so someone is maintaining this website currently. Okay. So what will happen whenever we are out of our capacity? Then we will see a lot of slowness. Okay. Now, okay, this is again a different story. I mean, slowness, hang, unreachable, crash. These issues we will see if the server capacity is full. For example, assume that 2 GB is only used, 2 GB is free, and 2 GB is only used. Then everything is well and good. But still, we will not be using this two-tier architecture. Fine. If for example, our application and database is using 2 GB only, out of 4 GB, 2 GB is used, 2 GB is free. But still, I don't recommend to use two-tier architecture. The reason is we cannot scale our applications. This 2 GB of capacity is okay for 100 users. In future, once our application got millions of views, what will happen? The number of users will be increased. In this case, it will be really difficult for us to scale. Means to increase the capacity, it is very difficult. Apart from that, what will happen is our application layer and database layer are on the same server. Means anyone who will hack my machine will able to get all the data, because this is a public one, right? This is one of the public server. If my application is accessible, it means it is in the public. What will happen? There are a lot of hackers who are sitting over the internet. What they will do? They will try to hack your application, and then they will try to steal all the data. Data is very important, right? We need privacy whether we are on Facebook, Instagram, or any XYZ applications. So there are a lot of issues related to security. Infrastructure scaling is not easily possible. Security is also not good. Anyone can hack and they can try to steal our data. Right? These are the different issues what we face in two-tier architecture. That's the reason we move to three-tier architecture. Let us discuss three-tier architecture. Guys, any questions on this? Then we have three-tier architecture. So we will be having our browser. This is my client. Okay. Now what I will do, I will create, so before moving to this, let me discuss it. So two-tier architecture is also recommended for development environment. This is also recommended for development environment. Means we will not be using this for production. If you want to do some basic testing and all, this is okay. You can create one server, you can set up application layer, database, everything, and you can try to use them. But we will not be using this for the production, right? Now let's move to three-tier architecture. So we are having one client. Now in three-tier architecture, we will be having three different type of layers. One is our client layer, and then one is our application layer. Means everything is configured in a different server application layer, and then we will be having our database layer. We call it as a data layer or database layer. Okay, so now what will happen? So for these servers as well, let me finish this diagram. We will be having our hardware, which is my hardware, which is my operating system. This is my hardware. This is my operating system. This is my operating system, and then is my application. Our application is Netflix.com, and we are using what Java-based application. Programming language is Java, and here we are setting up our database, and my database is MySQL. What is MySQL and all? We'll look into this after a couple of sessions. Okay. So now what is happening? We are trying to segregate our application layer, database layer, and client layer. Means we are having three different type of layers. One is client layer, one is application layer, one is database layer. So as discussed in two-tier architecture, I said that our database should not be public. It should be private. So where shall I keep my database, in public or private? Should I keep my database in public servers or private servers? Private servers. Database should not be exposed to anyone. So I will be securing my database by using private server. Private server means no one can access. Okay. For now, only remember that private means no one can access. Public means everyone will be able to access. For example, we have our Facebook account. If your profile is public, then everyone across the globe can access the profile. They can see who are your friends, all your information. If it is private, then only your friends will be able to access the profile. So where should I keep my application layer? Application layer, or we call it as business logic as well. Means actual code is deployed here. Code. Whatever code the developers has created, that will be deployed in the application layer. And this application layer, if it is trying to save any information, then that information is saved in database. So this is how the request will go. I mean, from client, it will request your application server, and then it will try to store the information in database if you are trying to save any files or any information, and then this will be responded back to the client. This is how the flow will be happening. So where should I keep my application layer? Whether this should be in public or this should be in private.
Public.
For example, if I am keeping this in public, so what will happen?
People can access it. Otherwise, it's
People can
private.
access. People can access it, but still this is not secure. Anyone who can access this, they will log into the server. I mean, any hacker will come here and he will steal all your source code. Source, if they are stealing the code, it means they can develop their own application. Already they have got all the code. They'll just make some modifications and they will try to update the application. Your application layer should also be in private subnets. Sorry, not subnet is again a different concept. Okay, let us not discuss about that. So private subnet. This can be used for production, but here, how will your application will get exposed? When it is in private, no one can access. So here we don't have any scope to expose our application to the outside world. If we'll keep in public, then again we have issues related to our security. Right?
Internet protocol.
Internet protocol is just for communication. I mean, your IP address. For this server, there will be one IP. For this server, there will be one. That is only for
If
communication.
the servers are private, then how can anybody access?
No one can access. That's what right we are trying to discuss. Your server is private, then no one can access your application. So that's where we move to entire architecture. Means there will be one additional layer in this entire architecture. So what we can do is, if you want to use for production environments, then we will be creating some additional layer. This is my browser. This is my client, right? This is my browser client. And then we will be having our application layer. Okay. And then we will be having our database layer. Everything is in private only. Okay. This is private. This is also private. Okay. So now we will be adding one additional layer. Additional layer called as
Network layer.
sorry, web server. I will be adding one additional layer called as web server or web layer. So now what is happening here? this web server will be in public. Okay? Web server is in public. There is no code stored in this web server. It will only have the configurations. No code. Only the configurations to connect to the application server and database. So all the requests will be coming to this web server. Because there is no code, it will only have the configurations to redirect the request to the backend server. This will be moved to application layer, and from here it will move to database layer. This is what will happen in entire. Entire means you can have n number of layers. So one layer I have added, that is web layer. Again, if I want to add something else, I can add. Now our application is secure. Everything is in private. Only the web server is in public, and this public URL is what I am accessing. And again, internally there is a lot of configurations which will communicate with the private servers. So web server means how many type of web servers we have? Web server used for static deployment, means static application deployment. Okay. Example, we have Apache. This can be called as HTTPD. We have Nginx. We have these two are example of web server. So I will be using either Apache or Nginx or HA proxy as well. We have one more thing called HA proxy, but HA proxy is for load balancer. I will be using either Apache or Nginx, and I will be creating my web server. And as part of application server, used for dynamic content deployment. Example, we have WebLogic, we have Apache Tomcat, we have JBoss. So these are different application servers which are available in the market. So we will be using these application servers. Then we have database. The data. It can be from user or it can be related to application. Anything which is trying to store some data. Example, MySQL, Oracle, PSSQL. We have other databases as well. There are a lot of databases. We have Cassandra. We have DynamoDB. Okay, so we will focus more on when we are working on database session. Clear? So now what is happening? Our application is secure. There is no code which is being exposed. Now I want to add one more layer, means I want to increase the security. So what I will do? I will create something called firewall. This is one more layer what I have added. Firewall, what it will do? It will have set of rules. Means it whenever we are trying to request something from browser, right? So first the communication will be reaching to the firewall. Inside firewall, I will be telling my firewall that please accept the request with the URL or with the protocol called HTTPS. This is one of the protocol. So please accept. So please accept the request from HTTPS only. The firewall will check this rule. Okay, if this rule is passing, then it will send the traffic to the request to the web server. Web server here it will try to check and it will redirect to the application layer. It will be reaching. So this is recommended for development or for the production. Can we use this kind of architecture for our application? Yes, we can use entire architecture for our application. This is used for the production environment. Means if you are able to access Netflix or Facebook, so they will be using these kind of architecture only in their backend. Right? So now what is happening? Okay, so we know that okay, we have on something called firewall. This can be used. Now what will happen is we can try to use one more layer. Okay, let me remove firewall. So what will happen is in my case currently how many browsers we are using? We are using only one browser, means only one client. For example, assume that we are having multiple clients, multiple users. There are n number of users, right? So lot of users who are trying to access my application. So we are getting the request from multiple browsers. What will happen? All the requests will be redirected to the same web server. Now again, there is a chance that if suppose this web server capacity is of 4 GB, then what will happen? If multiple people are trying to access this application, the application performance might be down. There might be slowness. There might be the application might hang or our application might get crashed. So in order to again avoid such cases, I will use one more layer called firewall. Sorry, load balance. What is the use of load balancer? Load balancer will help you to balance the load. Name itself is telling load balancer means it will try to manage the number of users. So what will happen? Before load balancer, it will distribute the load. Okay, before load balancer, I will implement my firewall means I will set my rules. Okay, so all the requests from this particular browser will be reaching to the firewall, and then firewall will redirect to load balancer. And here I will be having multiple web servers, multiple application server, app server. I'm just writing this as a app server. I will be having multiple database servers as well. So what will happen? My load balancer. Okay, this load balancer will check that okay, the server is free, there is no traffic. Okay, let me do one thing. Let me send this request, this browser request to this particular server, and this is how it will go. One more server, then it will come and load balancer will check. Okay, this web server is free, so let me push here. One more server, then it will try to move over here. One more request, then it will try to move from here. So this is how the traffic will be managed with the help of load balancer. Clear? Guys, yes.
Right. One doubt.
Yes.
The firewall and the load balancer which you have added as a layer, is it a server or a
No,
server?
no, no. So that depends again. I mean, if you are on the physical machines, that will be a hardware component. Okay. So we have different firewall companies, so they will help you to set up. That's their headache. Again, there will be
It's not a
hardware only.
okay,
Sorry?
only, but it's not a server.
Yeah, that is not a server. That will be a hardware component which will be managed by the firewall company. If you are using AWS, then AWS has their load balancer called application load balancer. How they are maintaining in the backend, we are not aware. The only thing what we know is okay, we have this load balancer who will manage it. Firewall will help you to configure set of rules. We have different firewalls in AWS like security group, NSCL, web application firewall. This will be a kind of software. Okay. Again, these firewall configurations is something what we do. I mean, what needs to be allowed, what needs to be denied. So we will be working on it. If it is on the physical machines, right? I mean, chasing the component from external companies, so that's something what we don't do. Okay. So this is all about one tier, two tier, three tier, and entire architecture. These architectures are very important. So in interview, they might be asking, can you please help me out? How can you deploy your application using three-tier architecture? They will not ask you about entire. They will ask you about three-tier, but you should redirect them to entire because entire has lot of features, lot of advantages. So you should tell them that we deploy when we will be creating multiple layers. Web layer which is public, application layer will be private, database layer will be private, and I will be having one load balancer. Load balancer is public. Load balancer will help us to distribute the load. Then I will be configuring one firewall to load balancer to restrict the traffic. Traffic means the number of users over the internet.
So what's this tracking started? It's not clear.
Is this okay now?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, Abel. No, it's
I am audible.
Yeah, now it's clear for me.
Okay. Okay. So we do have traffic over the internet. Traffic is not only on roads. Okay, so we do have traffic on internet as well. How to restrict them, how to protect them, then again we have these firewalls, load balancers and all to manage them. Okay. Okay. Now let us think about this. So what is happening is, for example, let me open one new incognito tab. I am trying to access netflix.com. Okay, what I am trying to do, I have opened my client, that is nothing but browser, and in this browser I am using one address. This is one URL, right? I am trying to hit enter, and then it went somewhere to some server and it got the response for us. So what happened in the backend? When I have executed netflix.com, what happened in the backend?
It checked all the layers you mentioned for the entire architecture.
Okay, so basically Netflix will be using entire architecture only, but prior to that entire architecture, what happened on my browser inside my machine? What happened on this browser? Means this is very important for you to understand. All these days we were using Netflix, Amazon, everything, but we were not aware about this, right? So this is my laptop, my browser, and what I have did, I have executed netflix.com. So what my browser did is, my browser requested for the URL called netflix.com. What is this URL called as? This URL is called as either hostname or domain name, right? So this URL is called as domain name. So why are we creating this netflix.com and all? I mean, why do we need these domains? Because For every server, we know that we can communicate with the help of IP address. For example, if can we remember all the IP addresses related to Netflix, Google, YouTube, and all?
No.
So is it possible for a human? It is really impossible, right? So that's where we have this domain name. So this particular domain name is mapped to the load balancer, because load balancer is something which is exposed, right? Load balancer is something which is public. So the load balancer domain is being attached to this netflix.com. Okay. Now the moment I have hit netflix.com in my browser, okay, so my browser, what it did is it started checking for the domain name. And what is the domain name? Netflix.com. So whenever you pass any domain name or any host name, it will check for the IP address of Netflix. So do we have IP address of Netflix? My browser, my laptop will start checking for the IP address of Netflix. Do we have IP address of Netflix? We don't have this IP. So my browser needs that IP address to process the request. If you are passing domain name, it will check for IP. If you are passing IP, it will check for domain name. So it needs both domain name and IP address to process the request. Right? So we don't have any Netflix.com. I mean, I am not aware about the IP address of Netflix because I am not the one who have deployed or maintaining the Netflix servers. So what my browser will do is my browser will check for local DNS. DNS means
Domain name server.
domain name server. So where is this local DNS available in my laptop? So what my laptop is doing, this is trying to check for DNS. Sorry. Okay, where is this local DNS? This local DNS is available in every laptop, in every machine or every server. This local DNS is available. Okay, where is this host file in Windows? Let me just check the path. Okay, so this is the path of your local DNS. So we have something called host file. What my laptop is doing, my browser is doing is it is coming to this particular location. Okay, so and then it is trying to check for the file called host. This is my local domain name server configurations available in my server. So do you see something called netflix.com here? Do you see any IP address related to Netflix? Here you can see 192.168, that is for host Docker internal. 127, this is localhost for Kubernetes, but here we don't have anything related to Netflix. So what it will do now? Okay, so it searched for here. If suppose this DNS is available, I mean the IP address is available, then my browser will pick the IP address from this host file and then process my request. So what will happen? If the local DNS will, I mean, if it is able to provide the IP address, then my browser will fetch the details. So in our case, we don't have this IP. So now what it will do? It will send the request to the root name server. This is what happening within fraction of seconds, guys. This is happening over internet. You will not be able to see. And this is happening within fraction of seconds. So root name server, this request went to root name server, and this root name server is not interested, means I will not check whether it is Netflix, Amazon, or it is Facebook. It is only interested in this .com, whether it is .com, whether it is .org, whether it is .tech, .in. So we have different type of domains, right? So it is interested only in this. So what root name server will do? It will check whether it is .com or whatever domain is available. Okay, it will check for that and then it will pass this information to top level domain. . Okay, this information is passed to top level domain by root name server. That this root name server, what it will do, it will tell them that it is .com. The user is trying to search for .com. Where is this happening? This is happening over internet. And now this top level domain, it will check for something called name server or NS. So now what happened? This top level domain, it said that okay, so the browser is looking for .com and this information is passed to name server. Name server will have the identifies the domain. So name server is trying to identify the domain, okay, which domain the browser is looking for. But here also there is no IP address. I mean, the name server doesn't contains any information related to IP address. So what name server will do? This request will be redirected to SOA. SOA means start of authority. What SOA will contains? It contains information of IP address. So what is happening? Name servers will send the domain to, it will identify the domain and it will send the request to SOA that the user is looking for netflix.com, and this SOA will have the IP address of netflix.com, and this IP address will be passed to name server again, and then name server will redirect to the top level domain, and then the top level domain, what it will do, it will redirect to the root name servers and then local DNS and then laptop browser, right? So this is what happening in the backend. Clear? What is happening in the backend when you are trying to hit netflix.com or any xyz.com? First, it will try to check for the local DNS. Local DNS is available in every server, and that file name is called as host. Remember the name called host, HOSTS. So once it will fetch this information, the IP address, what will happen? This request will travel to the Netflix data center. How it is traveling over the internet? We call it as data packets. It will travel based upon the data packets. And what all it will contain? It will contains about host name, protocol, which protocol this is using, whether it is HTTP or HTTPS or TCP or UDP, which protocol, and then source from where it is coming, and then the destination, what it is trying to look for. Based upon this information, this will go and try to connect to the Netflix data center. So which data center it is going? Netflix data center. This is our Netflix data center, which is available in US region. For example, this is just an example. Okay. So Netflix. So what is available here? First, the request will be reaching to firewall, and then we will be having our load balancer. Then we will be having our web servers. Shit. We will be having multiple web servers for high availability, right? Servers. And then we will be having our app servers. And then we will be having our database server, right? So this is what happening when you are trying to access netflix.com or any website on the browser. Right? So how this is traveling? With the help of data packets. Clear? Guys, don't get confused with all these things. Okay, so this is something which is happening over the internet and you will not be able to see this. So you will understand name server, SOA, local DNS in coming sessions. Do not worry about this. Just focus on the architectures and what is happening behind the scenes. I mean behind the browser. Okay. For example, let me show you something. Let me open CMD. We have one terminal called CMD. NS lookup. I mean, we have one command called NS lookup. So do not worry about this command. We'll be seeing these commands in the next sessions. Okay. So for now, I'm trying to execute NS lookup fb.com. So what this command will do? This command will help you to get the IP address of facebook.com. NS lookup will help you to get the domain name, the IP. Okay. So this is what it did. I mean, this is the server and this is the IP of the facebook.com. Now what I'm doing, I'm trying to check for this IP, NS lookup and the IP address. What happened then? You can see something. I mean, there is one URL. This IP is associated with this particular domain. You can see something called edge iPhone star mini HV iPhone 02 HYD 1.facebook.com. HYD one means Hyderabad, right? So this is in Hyderabad location, means our Facebook server is in Hyderabad. I am in Hyderabad, so it is trying to reach to the nearest server. So let me copy this. This is not facebook.com, right? This is one URL which is associated with facebook.com. So let me try to open this. Okay. Pasting this in browser and hitting enter. Let us see what will happen. See what happened? I tried to hit this URL, whatever I have copied. The moment I have executed this, it redirected the request to facebook.com. Means this URL is nothing but the URL of the load balancer. And the servers are being using in Reliance. I mean, Reliance is storing all their information. Which company is storing all this information? Facebook, Reliance. And this URL is nothing but the URL of load balancer. Means even Facebook is also using load balancer. Every company will be using load balancer. And this load balancer is exposed. This load balancer is exposed to the internet. And this load balancer is sending the request to web servers and app servers. Let me try to copy this IP. This is the IP of my load balancer. I mean Facebook load balancer. Let me copy and let me hit on browser. Let us see what will happen. Connection is not private because this is not HTTPS. This is not secure. Let me click on advanced, proceed. Let us see what will happen. See, sorry, something went wrong. But still you can see the Facebook symbol here. Means this IP is associated with Facebook only, but you are unable to access this. Maybe they have restricted this access in firewall. Let me try to access this with HTTPS. Instead of HTTP, this time HTTPS. But still this is blocked. I mean, they have configured their firewall in a way that IP addresses are not allowed. No one can access with the help of IP to Facebook. Either you can use domain name, that is facebook.com, or the domain of your load balancer. Clear? So this is all about entire architectures and the story behind the IP address. I mean the domain or any IP which we are trying to execute on the browser. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay. Please try to watch this video again. Note down all the notes. Update your status before leaving and also create your tickets. If you have any questions while watching the video, please let me know on Slack. I will be available.
Sabir, you said that in an interview, the interviewer will ask about how you will deploy the application using tier 3 architecture. So is that possible? Because both the servers are private in that, right?
Everything is private only.
Then how can we deploy if he is asking? So it we have to answer like no, it's not possible. Is that it?
No, you need to redirect that to entire architecture. I mean, you need to talk about load balancers. You need to talk about the firewalls.
Okay.
What is, I mean, generally what they think is 3-tier and entire both are same. That's kind of mentality what everyone is having.
Okay.
Or what they will be referring is 3-tier means your application layer, your presentation layer, your application layer, and your database layer.
So for instance, if we are adding any public server like load balancer, firewall, array, or anything, it automatically becomes the entire architecture, right?
Yes. Even if you add different layers, that still it is entire architecture only. We don't have anything called 4-tier or 5-tier.
Okay, just three tier
3-tier
architecture.
is the last and then
Is,
entire.
oh,
Okay. Guys, if you don't have any questions, then let me stop this recording and let us wind up this call. Thank you so much. Bye.